Okay, here I've got with me here Emily, and Emily is really going to help me out on this because Emily is a horse owner or is going to act as a horse owner where she can ask probably the same questions that a lot of you guys or gals are going to ask.
For sure.
So we're going to start off here, Emily, and we're going to go through this and get an idea of what all this entails and what it causes and the problems, and that's what we're going to look at. So let's go through
Okay.
some just real quick, the problems, then we're going to back up and go through each one step by step. How's that?
Okay, that sounds good to me.
Okay, let's go with what causes stumbling, overreaching, elbow hitting, forging, or clicking, as some horse owner calls it. And we're going to talk about all this, so
Okay.
you folks out there don't get your horse before your cart or cart before your horse. I get that right. Crossfiring is when the horse reaches over. Scalping, knee hitting, interfering, brushing. Of course, they're all interfering in some way. Speed cutting, the most dangerous. So anyway, all these problems before we get into sore back and all these other things, let's go back and start with the very beginning where everybody gets an idea of what we're talking about and how a real professional farrier is going to look at it, and
Okay.
even a horse owner should look at it.
All right.
So let's take ourselves, Emily. I always said, to understand the horse, we must understand ourselves a little bit, and or back up and look at ourselves. Now, how often do you stumble?
Once or twice a month, maybe.
So what you're saying, you're not stumbling every day or constantly stumbling all
No,
the time.
no.
Well, a horse can get out of balance in some way, or his toes too long, or the rider can shift their weight, or he can have a saddle shifted or setting his rear end over one side of the horse too far. It's sort of like you're carrying a child in your arms, and I know you've done that before, and you're walking along and you're real relaxed, say a 6-year-old child, and they shift their weight real quick and it throws you out, and you
Right.
may stumble, or you may step on a pebble.
Yeah.
So if you're doing that occasionally, every once in a while, we all stumble. That's pretty normal. But
Of
if you're
course.
doing it all the time, something is wrong. So then you got to get a farrier out there or somebody that really knows about farrier science to look at it. So let's look at a few causes. Okay, the toe can be too long. Well, suppose we take your right foot and we put too long a shoe on there. In other words, say, what size shoe you wear?
About a 7.5.
Suppose we put an 8.5 on your right foot and put a 7.5 on your left foot. Might cause you some problems.
I'd say so.
Okay, so it could be the shoer here. He could got one toe longer than the other, or he could have let the toes get too long and the heels get too low. See what I'm saying?
I get you.
So the problem can be the saddle, ill-fitting saddle where he's sore. The saddle can be too far forward, restricting the front end, or it can be the shoer, or it could be mental. So the problem is figuring out the cause, and that's where you're going to need a good farrier to come out and check it out to see what's causing this horse to stumble. Because in reality, stumbling, a horse could fall and roll over and hurt you. Sort of
Definitely.
like if we're carrying a baby and we stumble and fall, we could hurt the baby.
That's true. We don't want that, do we?
You bet. With a 1,200-pound horse rolling over you, it might squish you.
Yeah.
All right, Lemma, let's go to the second one. Overreaching. And we're going to go into some depths. Now, if you look at the arrow at the back foot, you can see the toe is reaching and grabbing the bulbs, or the hair, we'll say.
Okay.
And anywhere between those two arrows, we'll say up the leg there, if that hind foot is reaching, grabbing that on the same side. Now, it has to be on the same, a horse got 4 legs, so it has to be on the same side. If he reaches over the opposite side, we'd have to call that crossfire. But overreaching, when he reaches, grab the bulbs or anything higher, we call that overreaching. Now, we go right back to what could cause it. Now, this doesn't mean one of these. It could be a number of them. Too long a toe in the front, slowing him down. The back's too short a toe, speeding him up too much. Or it could be the saddle restricting the front end. Or it could be the horse mentally off. See,
Okay.
you're getting into a lot of different things can
Right.
cause
And
that.
it also looks like it would cause a lot of damage to the foot in front.
It does, and you're going to see where he's hit himself. But here again, when you get into athletic events, like me and we're going to run on a track race or something of that nature, we can get torquing in one way too much, and we could actually overreach. that doesn't mean there's something wrong. It just simply means you got out of footing. That
Right.
can happen to anybody. So if he's doing it all the time, something definitely wrong.
Okay.
Let's move right along to our next one.
Alrighty.
Elbow hitting, most of the time I would venture to say that's being caused by something mental, or it could be caused by a horse going downhill too fast or somewhere he's way out. But if horse is doing that often, there's something definitely really wrong. I'd be wanting to change horses, to be honest with you.
Right. So now explain to me about the anatomy of the leg. Like, where is the elbow exactly on a horse's leg?
About where the hoof is hitting, somewhere in that neighborhood. About basically just like that would be the shoulder part on us, but that's pretty well the elbow, what we call it, because you see where he's got his hand, that's the knee.
Mm-hmm.
So you'd have to go up a little bit to find the elbow, so to speak. So a little different there than a person.
Okay.
All right, now this is something, Emily, you see all the time. And I hear horse owners complaining all the time. And if you look at the back foot, you'll see the toe is striking the front shoe, anywhere on the bottom of that shoe on the same side, okay? And horse owners call that clicking. So if you look at the hind foot, and this is a common problem, but if a horse is foraging all the time, there's something wrong. And, you know, many horse owners, they just put up with it. But there's something definitely wrong. So if the hind toe or the shoe is hitting anywhere on the bottom of that shoe, it makes a clicking sound. That's steel hitting steel. And if it's on the same side. So restricting the saddle up front, restricting the front end can slow it down. Too long a toe in the front end and with too low a heel. Most of the time, I think we should take a look, and we will later on, when we open a foot up, you'll see that the hoof is the same thickness from the hairline to the ground surface. So you actually don't take any toe off if you got the right amount of heel. But the whole object here is not getting the saddle where it restricts the front end and slows him down, or getting the back foot, taking the toe off and speeding it up. So a horse is going to miss and not going to click if there ain't something wrong. But if he's doing it all the time, every one of these things can create a fall in a horse.
Right.
Endangers the rider's life as well as the horse itself.
It actually kind of reminds me when I tried running high heels.
You bet.
Same kind of effect.
Well, what you did, you put yourself, and that's a good example. If you put yourself in, say, high heel shoes, then you have raised up and got your bony structure out of alignment. And by doing that, I would hate to have to try to walk in those boogers, but the whole point is you have to go a lot slower. Cross-firing. Now, cross-firing is when a horse's foot reaches over to the opposite side, Emily, and catches somewhere.
Okay.
Now, this can do we'll say, if you go back to us, the person, and we're running around a barrel, or we're doing something out of the ordinary and we're not quite in shape. And there's another thing, being in shape. A horse has to be in good shape to be an athlete, just like me and you. So the point is, you can get out of footing and he can reach over and grab the other side. If he's doing that all the time, all these things can create a fall and injure the rider as well as the horse.
Definitely.
But having a horse lateral in medial balance, we're talking that creates different motions. And we'll get into that later about lateral and medial balance. Scalping is now the foot that's flat on the ground, okay, that'd be the hind foot. Okay, and then this foot up here where the toe is got up on the hairline, that's your front foot. That's when the hind foot is setting too long, and the front foot, he reaches back, and before he moves, that front toe grabs somewhere it can be up the hairline or whatever, but that front foot, the toe, is catching the back, and we call that scalping. And that's something that's your really low heels in the front can really cause a lot of these problems. Or, a horse can do it just like me and you. We can get out off a footing, and that may not be anything wrong. But if he's doing any of these things, if he's doing it all the time, something's definitely wrong. It needs to be fixed.
Okay.
Knee hitting is something that horse misses when they're moving. And this is something we need to look at with our camera, and we'll show that. We'll show a horse on a camera here, and you can see when the horse is moving. Let's try to put that a little in slow motion, how close they get to each other. They're only missing by just millimeters. They're getting very close when they're moving. So in doing that, if you get a horse out of balance lateral and medial, you make him either wing in or wing out too far, and we'll talk about that later. But when they start hitting each other, interfering, you've got something definitely wrong. Needs to be fixed.
Okay, is that tape that's been taken here at the Farriers
It's
National
at the Research
Center?
Center. And another things, have you ever been watching a horse race, Emily, and you see they're running and they're just tearing out down there and they're running? They're in a full gallop. That's when the
Yes.
hind feet's past the front. And the horse all of a sudden tumbles head over heels.
Yes.
He's speed cutting. He's interfering. He got his feet tangled up and he's speed cutting most of the time. And he's going to roll. And when he does, your subject, those horses are doing way up in it's 40 miles an hour or faster. And, you know, that can kill both the horse and the rider.
Wow.